let's look at this distinction between cognitive and structural components. And the cognitive part of social capital, it's suggested, is to do with these shared norms, attitudes, values, beliefs. For example, one we've just been looking at, that most people can be trusted. That's seen as cognitive social capital. That's contrasted with the structural social capital, which are these observable elements. The numbers of organizations, the numbers of members, the numbers of meetings people attend. Then we can make that distinction, but you can quite clearly see that the cognitive and the structural parts are so interrelated, because if you have high cognitive social capital, you're more likely to engage with other people. You're probably more likely to join organizations because you trust people. You trust them. And the reverse. If you don't have structural social capital, if you don't join groups, if you don't attend meetings, you've got less opportunity to develop trust in people because you're seeing a much smaller group. Maybe you're not really going outside your family. And so the outside people are much easier to not trust because you don't know them, you haven't met them. And so you can see how lower participation may reduce your cognitive social capital. What about this bonding and bridging social capital? This is a very widely used distinction. But if you read about it, it's made in two different ways. Sometimes the distinction between bonding and bridging, it refers to the identity of the participants, the identity, and sometimes the emphasis is about the gains from social capital. Let's take the first one. The idea is that bonding social capital refers to family and friends. And so it's the relationship between family and friends. These are closer bonds. And that can be contrasted with much looser arrangements you have with other people, like colleagues at work, or neighbours, people living in your vicinity, or if you're a member of some club or group, relationship with these other members. And that's seen as bridging social capital. It's a sort of linking outwards and making relationships with people beyond your usual group. But we also see that distinction between bonding and bridging, sometimes in question of the gains from social capital. So with the bonding social capital, all the benefits to that are within the group. They're within the family. And that can be contrasted with the bridging social capital, where it's relationships outside the group, and the benefits of that are potentially enjoyed by a much wider range of people. So that there'll be people who are not part of that network, but they still benefit from there being more social capital out there. So it's a sort of, well, in economics, we'll come on to this I think on Monday, we have something called an externality or external effect. And so the existence of all these organizations that I might not be a part of, but the existence of them adds to social capital, and I benefit from that. Now that's a contrast from the bonding one, the within family, where you have to be in the family to benefit from the cooperation within the family. But this bridging one, the fact that there are these networks of individuals, people participating, cooperating together, produces a general benefit that everybody can share in. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, standard example of externality in economics might be things like air pollution. Now, if a factory doesn't produce so much waste product, and it's as a part of its production process, the workers in that factory will benefit from that. They're not inhaling so many fumes and so on. But actually, everybody outside who shares in the environment is also benefiting from the factory not producing so much waste product. So that's an externality. So I think that's quite an interesting one, this way of looking at it. You begin to get a sense of where the community social capital might differ from individual social capital. You don't necessarily have to be part of the organisation. In this case, you don't have to be part of the family to get the benefits. Just being in the community, if there is more social capital in the community, there's a sort of another word for externalities, spillover effect. There's a benefit like that. And that's what makes me ask the earlier question, can we really identify community social capital just by adding up the individual elements? Maybe there's something greater than the individual elements. Now, in most countries, and here I'm going to speak for England, or actually, it's a difficult distinction between United Kingdom and England. As you'll know, United Kingdom, it's 4 countries. England, 1 country, just so happens it's the biggest. Oops, sorry. And some things we do on a UK basis, and some things we do on a country-by-country basis. And I have to say, I don't know if the Office for National Statistics responsibility is UK-wide. I think it is. But apologies for that. But maybe you don't have to worry about it. There's this sort of place in Western Europe that's largely England, but it's more than just England, it's United Kingdom. And we have a national body for collecting statistics. It's a sort of arm's length agency. And it's responsible for collecting, analysing and disseminating statistics. And these statistics are not just about the economy, but they're about society, they're about the population as a whole. And for a number of years, as really growing out of an OECD initiative, they have been reporting 23 individual measures that are thought to be indicative in this context of national well-being, but it's an alternative language for social capital. And I think it's quite interesting to look at these. They cover 4 domains. One element's the personal relationships, another's social network support, then something called civil engagement, and then finally the trust and cooperation norms. And I suppose a key feature of these measures is that they're almost entirely based on questions that are being asked anyway as parts of various surveys. And thus, the additional effort of sort of putting the information together is not great. So it's not that we're specifically asking a new set of questions each year. In this context, we're taking advantage of different ongoing surveys. So for example, there's something called the European Social Survey, which takes place in the separate countries of Europe, but a standardised set of questions. There's something in UK called Understanding Society, and that's a longitudinal household survey. And then for England, there's something called a crime survey, where we're finding out about people's perception of crime. And so the key feature here is these bits of information are being collected anyway. but then they're being put together in a sort of measure of national well-being. Also, the other feature is, and this is obviously true of all the sort of social capital elements, although the concepts may be rather general and hard to define, the measures, of course, they're all countable things. You know, what was the percentage of people voting in an election? How many non-profit organisations are there in a particular locality? They're all highly measurable.